Welcome to today's Menopause Monday. Today I'm talking about the brain, possible Alzheimer's link, and menopause. So it has been shown through various studies, I've been absolutely fascinated since I first heard about this, that 2 out of 3 individuals who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's are women. So out of every 3 people, 2 of those are women. And it's also been shown in a number of studies that our brains age. So women's brains age differently to men's brains rather. Men, they have, breaking it down into sort of the hormonal relationship. Men have testosterone, and that declines a little bit as men get older, but they have nothing like the decline like we have with our estrogen through menopause. As we go through the menopause, obviously all of our sex hormones decline, but estrogen is very important for the energy of the brain and the way the brain functions in particular. And those studies have shown that when the estrogen levels fall, as we go through that menopausal transition, those transitional years, which can be sort of 7 to 10 years, the estrogen, because it's declining, is actually providing less or stimulating less glucose and energy actually within the brain. And when that decline happens, there are links showing that it can lead to the creation of these amyloid plaques, which are associated with Alzheimer's. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have amyloid plaques that you're going to necessarily develop Alzheimer's, but it is that there is a link there, I think, as we're all well aware. So the point of this is to go over a little bit about how estrogen and the decline of estrogen actually affects our brain, so that you know you're not going crazy, because you're not. It's just a transitional phase. But also if we know that we need to start to care for our brain health in midlife rather than latter life, because we associate menopause with our middle years, or you may have a surgically induced menopause if you've had to have your ovaries removed, or a hysterectomy, something like that. But we associate Alzheimer's with older age, and more studies are showing that it's highly linked in women to our hormones, and during the menopausal years. So we need to be thinking about our midlife health now to support our older health, because the choices we make now are largely going to define the quality of latter life that we enjoy. And this isn't to say that, if somebody has advised you to have a hysterectomy and you're 20, you're 25, 30, you have to have that done. It's just to say that there are studies showing that when our menopause happens, it does slow down the energy and the glucose, the activity of the neurons in the brain. So I'm going to go into it in sort of a bit of detail. I think also we're very good at looking at the brain as something separate to the rest of the body. And the systems are all so interrelated, and our sex organs and our hormones have a backwards and forth conversation with the brain all the time. So, when our hormones are off, it does negatively impact the function of the brain. So, for instance, like there are various areas of the brain which are affected more specifically by that drop in estrogen. The hypothalamus, for example, that is one of those areas that regulates our temperature control. So when the estrogen when the messages aren't going through to the hypothalamus as strongly as they may otherwise do, because of the decline in estrogen and the lack of energy in that area. The estrogen's not activating that area particularly. That's when we can tend to have a lot of the hot flushes that we experience, because of the temperature regulation part of the hypothalamus controls within the brain. Also, the brain stem is another area that is activated by estrogen. So when our estrogen levels fall, brainstem is associated with our sleep and our quality of sleep. So of course, if we've not got so much estrogen flowing around, then it can impact the quality and the duration of our sleep. Another area is the amygdala, and also quite close to that is I always want to call it the hypotenuse, is the hippocampus. I don't know why. Hippocampus. The amygdala controls like the emotional area of our brain. So when estrogen is declining and it's not activating that area of the brain as effectively as it might otherwise do, that can lead us to anxiety, depression, mood swings. Also, just to, it's not just Alzheimer's that are higher rates in women. We also have more anxiety disorders. We also have higher rates of depression. Now, I think some people could quite rightly argue, or put a strong argument across that maybe as women we find it easier to talk about our emotional health, and I think there's the stigma out there around mental health in general, but I really feel that it's even harder for men to admit that they've got a few problems, and it could be partly because we're seeing higher incidence of depression and anxiety in women. It might just be because more women are going and asking for help. Not entirely sure, but I think it's very important to understand that it's not you going mad, it's not you going crazy, it is the relationship of estrogen and the impact that has on the brain. So just going back to the amygdala, that is our emotional seat of the brain. So when the estrogen isn't activating it as well as it might otherwise do, that's when we can have those volcanic, not hot, but we lose our fuse. We have sudden anger outbursts. We feel incredibly emotional. We feel more, we can cry. We can, it's just, we get the anxiety. And then the hypotenuse or the hippocampus is associated with memory. And that's why if you keep forgetting things, the brain fog, the sort of the tiredness, that is part and parcel of that sort of memory decline, is part and parcel of the fact that the estrogen just isn't activating the part of the hippocampus, or the part of the brain called the hippocampus, as effectively as it might otherwise do. So you're not going mad. It is just a transition. And while we can understand how estrogen, the decline of estrogen affects the brain, it gives us, I think it allows us to give ourselves grace that our brains are going through a transition. The body is incredibly versatile, and in most instances we recover. We do recover after the menopausal years have happened. Our brains might be tireder than men's, but again, it's also been shown in various studies and scans that we have no less cognitive decline than men do. So we're just as sharp, but we might just be a little bit tired. And so I think appreciating that allows us to give ourselves more grace, because our brains are adjusting. It's not just a sex hormone related things. It's not just around our ovaries. It really is having a big impact on how our brain actually functions. So you can be kind to yourself on that front. And so going sort of tying that into the sort of the amyloid plaques, if you take like a PET scan, so an energy scan of a woman's brain before she goes through menopause, it's very bright. There's a lot of activity in it. And then you do the scan a few years later on the same woman once she's gone through the menopause, and the scan, that PET scan, is a lot duller. There's a lot less energy taking place in the brain. And the reason for that is because estrogen, like I said, releases it pushes the neurons to release glucose within the brain to give it more energy. And so when that activity is declining, that is a risk factor for developing these amyloid plaques, which are associated with Alzheimer's. So I would imagine it's one of those fields that there still needs to be an awful lot of studies to make it an absolute definitive proof. But it goes to show that our women's brains, it's not just chronological aging. So it's not, they don't slow down as we get older. There's a very big change during those menopausal years. However, once we've gone through that menopausal phase, the brain does tend to adjust, which is great. We get back our sharp, our energy in our brains, but it's that lack of activity during those menopausal years, which can possibly lead to the formation of these amyloid plaques. Again, there are other factors involved in that. Sleep is incredibly important. Our lifestyle, so do we exercise? Do we manage our stress? Stress is a big one. I'll go into that in a minute. And what are we eating? What are we feeding ourselves? The level of incidence of dementia like the umbrella is like the umbrella term. Alzheimer's is associated more specifically with those amyloid plaque creation. But the ladies who follow the Mediterranean diet show much reduced levels of dementia, depression, anxiety, and the development of Alzheimer's specifically. And they think it's due to the fact that the Mediterranean diet, and I say diet, I mean as food that they eat. I think people still think diet is restriction. I'm talking about the amount of food that people eat. It's heavily laden in phytoestrogens, so foods that are high in phytoestrogens. Some estrogens have been, you might be thinking, oh no, I don't want to add estrogen because of the link to cancer. Phytoestrogens are plant-based estrogens. They don't have the same link to cancer as some other estrogens do. But just to eat foods like dried apricots, legumes, lots of vegetables, fruits, dark chocolate is very good. Caffeine, not like the typical takeaway coffee that you get that's laden with syrups and all the other gunk that they stick on it, but proper high quality caffeine is also very, very, I think it's the highest antioxidant drink that you can have. So, you know, if you're a coffee lover, if you love coffee and you love dark chocolate, you quids in, just don't eat or drink too much of it. But just having a diet that is eat the colors of the rainbow. I think that guidance is so important, and it's so important. It's, you know, like blueberries, blackberries. In fact, blackberries have a higher antioxidant content than blueberries do. But try and eat the colors of the rainbow, because that way you're going to be making sure you've got a real wide range of the antioxidants and those phytoestrogens, which are going to support your brain health as you go through the menopause. Obviously, exercise is incredibly important. It helps us to manage stress effectively, but it also increases the blood flow and the oxygenation through our bodies. It obviously helps us manage weight more effectively as well. And so, you know, some kind of exercise regime is very, very important to you. Stress management is hugely important, because cortisol and estrogen play like a balancing act. So when our cortisol spikes, so when we're under a lot of stress, it further reduces our estrogen. And when our estrogen when we're less stressed, it allows our sex hormones to balance better. Stress is a precursor to those amyloid plaques. It also negatively impacts our sleep. So it's not about living in a stress-free environment, because that's impossible. We can't control things that go on around us. We can't control some of the people that are close to us, but we can control our reaction to stress. One book that I read, which I just thought it had such a lovely outlook about living life, you know, with a really useful spin on just protecting your own energy, without it going into like energy, and particularly if you find like when people talk about vibrational levels, if you find that all a little bit woo-woo, it was really pragmatic book, and it was called Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. If you've not read it and you want to just have it's just such a gentle book to read, and he's got some really, really powerful things in there about how we can detach ourselves and protect ourselves from negative stressors that are around us. But of course, we can have a big impact on that, because if you eat badly, if you eat a lot of processed foods, if you eat a lot of refined sugars, refined carbs, that's a stress to our body. So you can make immediate changes. You know, stop processed foods, because we don't need it. Get good at just learn how to meal plan and prep, because what is it? Do you want the burger or whatever it is that you eat, or do you want that risk of the amyloid plaques? And I'm not saying they're both directly related, but there's a lot of evidence showing that our lifestyle has a massive impact on how we age, and particularly our brain health. So before you tuck into that next meal of processed food, think, you know, how many amyloid plaque potentials are in this meal I'm about to eat? Because for me, it really makes me think, blimey, it makes you think twice about what you're about to put in your mouth. So go heavy on vegetables, eat the colors of the rainbow, like I said, drink plenty of water. Smokers, if you smoke, just stop, because that has a massively negative impact on your health in general, but particularly brain health. So I think it's also just important to understand that we need to really focus on cultivating an arena of well-being that supports us on every level. So prioritize sleep, move your body, eat the colors of the rainbow, eat lots of vegetables, get outside into nature, live life like you would expect your ancestors to live life. I know you can't, we're not cavemen and women anymore, but there's a lot that we can do in our modern society to make a big improvement to how we tend to our own health, and ultimately it's our responsibility. The good thing that I do want to say is that you might think, oh well, should I go into hormone replacement or hormonal therapy in order to protect my brain health? There are no studies right now pointing to the fact that you should do that in order to improve your brain health. So it is not recommended. Doesn't mean to say they won't recommend something in the future, but as it stands at the moment, hormone therapy is not a recommended treatment for protecting us against Alzheimer's. The most important thing that we can do right now is to make those changes which are going to make our lifestyle healthier and happier for us. Turmeric also is a very, very powerful anti-inflammatory and antibacterial spice that you can eat. It's shown in populations that eat a lot of turmeric, their levels of Alzheimer's, their levels of depression and anxiety disorders are seriously reduced as well as being great for our gut health, our joint health and that sort of thing. So, if you like curries or Indian food or spices, go large on the turmeric, because if you could eat that sort of 2 to 3 times a week, you're going to be doing yourself a massive, massive favor. And healthy fats. We need healthy fats for our central nervous system. Our brain is largely fat. The fat layers of brain fog forms the sheath around our neurons, our nerve cells, the myelin sheath. Fat is incredibly important on so many different levels. So please don't think you should go on a low fat diet. You should not, particularly through menopause. We need healthy fats to support us. Go on a low sugar diet, but not a low fat diet. Adaptogens are something that I use daily to help me manage stress more effectively. You can Google adaptogen herbs. You'll find so much information about them. They are absolutely fascinating. I take mine in like a little sachet every day with pre and probiotics, because our gut health is incredibly important for our mental health too. If you want any information on that, just message me. I can tell you which ones I have and how I have them. But I notice, and also a lot of the people who I know take adaptogen herbs, it's helped their mental health incredibly. And also, if you can manage your stress more effectively, it's going to have a positive impact on belly fat. It's going to help you reduce belly fat, because belly fat is largely a symptom of stress levels, us not managing our stress levels effectively. And women need more antioxidants than men do. It's just the way it is. So just know that while men's and women's brains, we all age chronologically, during our menopausal years, women's brains slow down. We don't have as much energy in them. So right now, through middle age, or even before you get to middle age, if you're watching this before then, start to make those changes to your lifestyle that are going to support you, because what we do now will define our older years. And I definitely don't want to end up with Alzheimer's. I don't want dementia, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone else. I've seen it close up, what it does to people, and I think all of us probably have been impacted with loved ones who've had dementia, or people that we know who have dementia. So just make sure that you're understanding that your menopause is not just a sex organ or sex hormone related problem or issue. It's also very much a neurological thing. I think you have heavy periods, you might need a hysterectomy, you're going through the menopause, you go and see your doctor or your ob-gynae. None of us think about going to see a neurologist or even a nutritionist. I have to say, if I was really struggling with my menopause, I'm glad I'm not. My menopause hasn't been a problem for me at all. I get a few hot flushes, I get a bit of brain fog, but it's not a major issue. I would go and visit a nutritionist firstly, because what we feed our bodies ultimately determines how we live our life on so many different levels. So that's where I would start. But there are all sorts of different, it's not just a clear-cut approach, but I would maybe see my ob-gynae, and I would definitely be seeing a nutritionist, and I would possibly even see a neurologist, because they can do the scans, they can have a look at your brain health. They can do the tests that will show you how healthy you are within your brain, and enable you to take measures right now in order to improve your lifestyle, so that you end healthy and that you don't just go through menopause and then have a steady decline in your health and your energy levels in general. It's up to us to make those changes. I know some of them aren't the easiest, but they're not hard either. I think we have more resistance to it, thinking, oh, I've got to stop my processed foods. Oh, I can't be bothered to cut out sugar. Or I can't be bothered to read labels on packets. Well, just ask yourself, what's the alternative? It doesn't take long. I didn't know these things until I started learning about them either. And every day is a learning day. That's all I can say, is just start with something small and just build upon that knowledge. But if you can make sure that you're eating lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, you're going to be doing pretty well. So you're going to be setting yourself up for success. And just remember, if you love dark chocolate, really enjoy it while you eat it. So hope that's been helpful. Like I said, if you want any more information on those adaptogen herbs, that mixture that I take, I'm more than happy to share that with you. But stay safe. We might be going back into masking up, mandatory masking, and possibly even more working from home. So keep away from that lurgy. I'm sure if our immune systems are working well and we're eating plenty of fruit and veggies, it can't do anything but help boost us. So, and prioritize sleep. So yeah, catch you soon. Thank you for your time today. And anything you want me to discuss in future Menopause Monday sessions, just drop me a message and I'll make sure to add it to the list.